Wait, what about weird?
Hi, Echo here. Before we get into this episode, I just wanted to give a brief warning that all episodes within our Jonestown series include discussions about sexual assault, suicide, animal abuse and death, child abuse, homophobia, racism, emotional manipulation, murder, and cult activity. Many of these topics will be disturbing to hear about, and if listening to any one of these topics disturbs you, please skip this series and enjoy any of our other episodes. Thank you. Hi, I'm Echo.
And I'm Elena, and this is our podcast, What About Weird, a podcast where we discuss all things weird, from cryptids and aliens to strange science and unhinged history.
And today, we are going to be talking about Jim Jones and the People's Temple and their move to Guyana.
Have you had enough of it yet?
Yeah, we had...
You better not have.
We had planned for this to be the last episode, but my notes are kind of long despite leaving out so much. So we're just going to see how long this ends up. And if it's going to end up being like 3 hours, then we're going to do a fourth part.
Or a 3-hour episode.
Or a 3-hour episode.
You're like, I'm a woman of my word. We're sticking to 3 parts.
2-hour episode? That's not that
You just cut out
bad.
all of my jokes.
It's just me talking the entire time.
It's like, hi, I'm Elena. And then it's just Echo talking for 4 hours. And then it's like, who is Elena and what does she have to do with this?
I cut out like literally all of like everything you
just
say.
Hear wait just
it's just
all
me.
the beginning of my sentences.
Like, me respond to stuff and there's just no like question beforehand or reply. Okay, so last week we talked about Jim's Indiana church had fallen apart. He lost a whole bunch of key members after his 2-year trip to Brazil. He picks up and moves to California, uprooting the lives of his most devoted members who choose to follow him. In California, he begins busting out to new cities to obtain new members. He begins selling some church merch. And doing some crazy faith healings. They donate baked goods and money to get in good with politicians and police and the press. We
definitely weren't gay. They weren't gay. He wasn't gay. Nobody was gay.
Well, no.
Everybody was gay.
Everybody is gay except him.
Right. And he definitely did not assault anybody.
No assaults whatsoever.
How many monkeys were involved in this episode?
Many monkeys.
This is the monkey episode?
The main monkey right now is Mr. Muggs.
Okay. We did the spider monkey
selling. Yeah, he was selling the spider monkeys.
Okay, we're selling spider monkeys. We got Mr. Muggs. Somebody had an attack monkey. That wasn't Mr. Muggs, or was it Mr. Muggs?
No, that was his first monkey that he got to that he trained it to attack. But I'm pretty sure he also did the same shit with Mr. Muggs, because Mr. Muggs is a little unhinged in some parts. But we meet Tim Stone and his wife Grace. When Grace gives birth to their first child, John Victor Stone, Jim basically forces Tim to write a letter saying that Jim Jones had sired the child and that John Victor Stone was actually his. Jim starts gaining thousands of members. A church hierarchy forms, with the elite mainly being a bunch of hot white women that Jones can sleep with.
I just want to say the phrase sired a child makes it sound a lot cooler than Jim Jones might have slept with his wife.
That's how it was put in the letter, So even from the very start, he's parading around as a social justice warrior and desegregating the church, actively trying to enlist black people in his church. We learn that he's actually a racist fuck who really just wants to take advantage of anyone vulnerable.
Nobody saw that coming.
Jones also begins sleeping with men in the church, but it's not because he's gay. It's because he's trying to show everyone else that they're gay. The Gang of 8, Jim Cobb and crew, defect from the church and basically makes Jim even more controlling than he already was. He fakes his own assassination attempt. He decides to...
With the rock through the window?
He fakes his own assassination attempt. Remember when he gets shot from the bushes? And
he
has, the bloody shirt and everything, and he says he healed his own bullet wound?
And then they're like, yeah, let's look at that shirt. And he's like, what shirt?
Yeah, the police are like, oh, we need to, like, take this into evidence. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about, even though they had it on display.
Yeah, I was thinking about the rock thing where he, like, busted the window and, like, put the rock in the middle of the room.
Yeah, but then the window
wrote,
was
like, you suck with red crayon
on
it. Yeah.
He decides to move the People's Temple overseas to Guyana, an impoverished socialist country in South America. It's important to note, while quite a few members of the People's Temple were all in on the religious aspect, many members didn't necessarily believe in the healings or believe that Jim Jones was God, but believed in the societal and social mission of the church so much that they always believed the ends justified the means. When Jim Jones decided to move the People's Temple to Guyana, the government there and the people tried to make them as comfortable as possible and welcomed them with open arms, especially since, according to Jones, they had $2 million to spend on their settlement and the economy of Guyana. The locals immediately took a liking to Jim. Most white visitors didn't interact with them at all, but Jim was happy to treat them as equals. Instead of bringing in food or requesting food from America, he would enjoy their local cuisine and drink some of their aphrodisiacs.
I wonder why.
It's not like he once slept with 16 people in one day.
Yeah, that is... For comic effect, I love it, but in reality, I hate it that you specified that he was like, and he tried every single aphrodisiac that they had. It's like, okay, dude.
So they basically give him a chunk of land that they want him to set up as an agricultural mission, because the deal is, we give you this land, you start, producing food on it and set up a settlement here and contribute to the economy of Guyana. So they decide to call this agricultural project Jonestown, of course. All of the members that he brings down to Jonestown is just this random spot in the jungle at this point. They only packed for 3 weeks, but now Jones was begging them to stay for months, saying they needed to work out the details of the lease, order supplies, and get the settlement started. So Jim Jones ends up asking his assistant minister. He's just a little bitty minister.
Add that to the dictionary. You gotta add that to the dictionary. I don't have access to it.
Minister Archie Imes to stay, but Archie was adamant that he couldn't leave his family for that long. But
Archie Imes was like, you're going off the rails, dude. Peace.
Of course, Jim Jones faked a heart attack and told Archie that he would lose his leader if he didn't do what he said. Archie, afraid of losing Jim, decided he would indeed stay. Archie wanted Jim to send some help, because obviously you can't build an entire fucking settlement with that few people.
Watch me! Jim said, hold my flavor aid.
Yeah, and he basically told Jim, hey, please send people that, I would especially get along with or that will be helpful. But Jim said Archie was trying to get people that he could manipulate. Yeah, Jim is like, oh, you just want people you can manipulate. Really? Archie wants people he can manipulate? Okay, that's cool.
Archie's trying to steal Jim's tactics.
And so instead, Jim purposefully sends him people that he will not get along with, including 3 delinquent teenagers that he just wanted to shuttle out of the state.
So he stuck them in... Was this the first wilderness project? Those wilderness camps for bad kids?
Yes.
Just the first one was just Jim Jones?
Yeah, maybe. This is when Jim Jones begins telling Archie's wife that he was sleeping around on her, which caused problems in their marriage.
That Archie was sleeping around on her? Or that Jim was sleeping around on her?
That Archie
because Jim is sleeping with everybody, so I don't know if he's like, hey, I know that I've been seeing you behind your husband's back, but I just want you to know that I'm seeing everybody behind your back.
Remember, he doesn't sleep with the black people, and the Imeses are a black family.
Okay, right, yeah. Sorry, bold of me to assume. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Oh, he's so racist. It's so bad. Jim tells Archie's wife that Archie's sleeping around on her, which I'm not even sure he was. I saw nothing that said that he actually was. I think Jim is just he's just trying to start shit.
Jim is being Jim.
And so, of course, this causes problems in their marriage, which drove Archie to almost leave the People's Temple. He calls up Jones angrily one day and says, "I'm out. I'm done with this." But his absence from the People's Temple was short-lived. Jones was able to calm him down and convince him to come back.
Unfortunately.
But after this supposed insubordination from Archie Imes, he was treated incredibly poor by the other church members.
Is it just me, or every time you hear the word insubordination, you imagine it in like an old-timey general voice? Insubordination! With like a good jowl shake in there.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you gotta go back to puffing on your pipe. Insubordination.
And so essentially, he sends down people to help Archie Imes set up Jonestown. But now everybody fucking hates Archie Imes, and so they constantly belittle him. They yell at him for spending too much money. They tell him he's doing everything wrong, or just say that he's overall a bad follower of Jim Jones. And when him and his wife were reunited in Jonestown, they were finally able to patch up and save their 40-year-long marriage. But Jim Jones had certainly done a number on the happy couple.
I thought... For some reason, I thought they were there was like a young couple.
No, Archie is much older than Jim. He's like
I thought Archie was like in his mid-20s or something.
No, he's 61 at this point. And he's had 17 years of service to the People's Temple. I
forgot that this thing had been going on
for a
forever.
long fucking time. Yeah, because Archie Imes has been with Jones from the beginning, since his church in Indiana. Which is another reason why it's so fucked up that Jim is being so horrible to him and has convinced all these other church members to be so horrible to him.
For some reason, I thought it's only been 8 years since all this shit has gone down. But so this started in the 40s, right?
They started in the 50s, and then they moved to California, I think in 67.
And now it's the late 60s, early 70s?
Yeah, I want to say early 70s, and now they've moved to Guyana.
I have no idea how timelines work.
So at the age of 61, after 17 years of service to the People's Temple, Archie was so distraught by the betrayal of Jim Jones and the church members treating him so poorly that he even thought about jumping overboard on the ship and taking his own life. But
Jim or Archie? Oh, I was going to make a joke, and then I checked, because I was going to be good, you should. And then I was like, oh, it's Archie. Never mind. We don't want that.
He ultimately decided he couldn't do that to his wife. But he felt this constant shame and a lot of racism that came along with being part of the church. Something that he thought that he had been able to escape by joining the temple.
It's almost like the leader is racist and using him as an anti-racist coin.
Yeah, pretty much. So Archie had been given $45,000 for supplies in Guyana. Him and other People's Temple member buried the money to keep it safe, but when they went back for it, they couldn't find it. So at one of the PC meetings, Jim Jones asked the members if they would kill Archie Imes. Several of the other individuals volunteered to actually murder this man. A lot of these were the same individuals that Jones sent down to Guyana with Archie.
This makes me think of, there was some other cult I was listening to a thing about, and they were talking about how this one guy was sorry to go a little off topic, but this one guy was giving him a bad name. It was yeah, these guys are basically a cult. Mm-hmm. And the cult was well, we can't be having this guy saying we're a cult. And someone was hey, I'm really good with snakes and weapons. And they're okay, have fun. And just sent this guy to kill a guy because he was it just made me think of that. That's so ingrained in their brains that they're just yeah, no, I'll do it happily.
So Archie, knowing that these people that are now living next to him, they're literally his neighbors now, want to basically kill him. He's fuck this, we're getting out. So he went back to the site where they buried the money. He ended up finding the $45,000 and decided he was going to take it to himself, get a flight out of Guyana.
With his wife, or?
Yeah, but I guess, and I don't think his wife was there at the time. I think only he needs to fly to Guyana. But he couldn't get a flight out for a week. So He went from hotel to hotel to different Guyanese residence homes, trying to hide out from the People's Temple, but ultimately he was tracked down by Jim Jones himself. Jim Jones had flown out there from California, and Archie told him, like, hey, you may have desegregated the church, but there's still extreme racist attitudes, and, you know, I basically can't interpret you or this church as anything other than racist. And Jim said, I'm sorry to hear that, and was basically like, yeah, if you want to leave, you can leave, which we know isn't true, but he's putting on...
But I'll shoot you if you do.
Yeah, basically putting on this good face.
It goes back to the first thing when he was a kid of, like, not wanting... Being like, oh, you can't leave or I'm going to shoot you in the face with this BB gun or whatever. Or I'm lock you in the hayloft. He's going to lock this guy in Guyana.
And so basically Jones is like, yeah, you can leave the church, but, you know, I'm going to need that money back. And, of course, Archie's like, fuck, I don't know what I'm going to do without this money. Basically, Jones staged a public apology when him and Archie were back in California, where he's like, Archie, I'm so sorry.
When you say staged, do you mean he set up a public apology, or the whole thing was staged?
Both. Basically, he's like, I'm going to apologize to you in front of all of these people, and if you don't forgive me, you're going to look bad.
You're a bad person.
Yeah. And then he's like, basically, Archie, I'm sorry, we love you. I'm sorry you feel that we're racist, but we're really trying our best, and, you know, you're free to leave the church.
We're not racist, you're just sensitive.
But that $45,000 that I gave you is church money. Like, we need this for Jonestown. You're gonna have to give that back. And so Archie actually decides to give back the money to Jones, but as soon as he gives his money back to Jones literally looks at him in the eyes and says, you should have died in Guyana. And
just like on the stage, or like,
I think behind closed doors.
Okay.
But yeah, so Archie gives him the money back, and Jones is like, you should have died there. But even with all of this abuse and basically like death threats, Archie Imes would never fully leave the People's Temple. And I think a lot of it is because he felt like he was too old and it was too late for him to start over. He had dedicated so much of his life to this cause, and he had given all of his money to it as well. So
that's so unfortunate.
Yeah, it sucks. As construction of Jonestown was underway, the first structure being set up was actually a cage for Mr. Muggs to go in. Jim Jones started
because Mr. Muggs was going to bite people's faces off otherwise.
Yeah, and he would try to, like, piss on people and stuff, and he was, in general, a little wild, which I'm sure was intentional on Jim Jones's part. Jim Jones started exaggerating the conditions of Jonestown. He did not convey to the people back in California that the members in Guyana were doing backbreaking work, clearing out brush, building structures, and trying to grow food in the middle of a jungle. He would tell the residents in California that it was a tropical paradise with sweet fruit going on all... Motherfucker,
it was
learn
a
how to
jungle
speak.
Paradise, so long as your paradise includes back-breaking labor and malaria.
Yeah. So he told the residents of California that it was a tropical paradise with sweet fruit growing on all the trees, so plentiful that it would fall right in your lap. He even told them that there was a bunch of fruit that tasted like ice cream. He would invite photographers and a couple of journalists get down to Guyana for a promotional event where he spread store-bought fruit onto the ground for photos, lying and saying that they had come from the trees.
He's just like, do you see this tomato? It has come from the tree. See this palm tree behind me? This tomato came from it. It's like
a whole bunch of fruits that don't fucking grow in Guyana, and he's like, look here.
It's just like apples and watermelons and stuff that isn't tropical at all. And it's just like blackberries and raspberries.
Right.
And it's like, it has come from these trees. And they're all coconut trees behind him. He's just like, it has come from these trees.
There's actually pictures out there. Like, you can find these pictures out there where he's just, like, sitting on the ground with, like, a bunch of fruit around him. And it's just fucking store-bought fruit.
I'm picturing, like, he's taking pictures of, like, printed out pictures of fruit, but, like, just pasting them on the walls, like cutouts from magazines of, like, fruit, just pasting them in trees. See, it came from this tree. I have to look up these pictures now.
He's, like, photoshopping them.
Yeah, I'm genuinely curious. But I'm picturing, like pictures from, like, grocery store. You know the grocery store papers they'll give out?
Oh, yeah.
Like, cutting out those and, like, taping them into trees and being like, see, it came from the trees.
So while he was supposed to be promoting their agricultural efforts and social efforts, Jones was instead advertising for his healings. At a massive temple event, he conducted many healings on multiple individuals, healing somebody's faulty legs, curing a woman's cancer, etc., except it was later found out that all of these healings were conducted on People's Temple members. The churches in the area were disappointed with the bogus healing, and it ended up with Jim Jones and the People's Temple getting bad press. It also hurt their relations with the Guyanese church, common folk, and government. There's nothing like a theatrical fake healing to put a sour taste in someone's mouth. So they ended up having to, like, kind of apologize for this event, because everyone was like, hey, you're supposed to be talking about the good you're doing in the agricultural effort. We don't want to see you do a bunch of fucking fake healings.
He's like, see, we don't need a doctor. And they're like, we need food. Like, I'll heal your starvation.
So back in California, where most of the People's Temple members still resided, Jones decided to shift his emphasis on bigger cities, setting up a communal lifestyle for the members near their San Francisco church. He wanted everybody to share the same food, the same housing, the same clothes, so that no one was inferior. This would mean everybody raised each other's kids, took care of the elderly together, and not a single person owned anything. They would all follow temple rules. Dozens of people's properties were donated to this cause.
Is this communism or late-stage capitalism? We may never know.
Many of these individuals were poor and had saved up their entire lives to buy these houses, only to sign the deed over to the church. Rather than focus on obtaining new members, Jones sought to strengthen his relationship with the current members of the church and continue to profit off of them financially. Their possessions were pawned at the temple antique stores or at flea markets. People handed over their paychecks, like their Social Security and their welfare. In return, they were housed, fed, and had free childcare. They had people to take care of them when they were old, and their medical expenses would be taken care of. All which would be great if it wasn't run by a power-hungry, manipulative asshole. The good news is that even though Jones would perform healings quite often, he still advocated for temple members to go to their regular physician's appointments.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I was worried that he was going to be like, well, I can heal everything, so we don't need a doctor, and then everyone's dying of scurvy or like mumps.
Yeah, and Jones himself actually went to regular physician's appointments. He once even underwent psychiatric evaluation where he was diagnosed as paranoid with delusions of grandeur, but of course he would never tell anybody
and
that.
Jim was like, you're just lying. You're just out to get me.
Yeah, he basically told everyone that he was like, they say my mind is strong and amazing. And then later on, they're like, oh, actually he was diagnosed with, like, paranoia and fucking delusions, so.
Wow.
Because, and this part is really sad. I'm very sorry. Yeah. So, because a lot of families had pets, not all of them could go into communal living. And instead of just, finding homes for them, they decided of a mass execution of animals that they were no longer able to take care of. So, giant pits were dug.
That's it. Podcast over. Get out of my house.
They basically dug a bunch of giant pits, and dozens of dogs were shot and thrown into them. At each communal location, it was also so overcrowded that when social workers stopped by, they would have to hide some of the children.
With this whole taking care of the pets thing, it makes me think of when he was a kid and would adopt all these pets he couldn't take care of, and he's treating people like pets now. He's adopting all these people and taking in all these people that he can't take care of properly. Mm-hmm. But he's like, see, I'm taking care of them, even though he's not really.
Yeah, and I'm all for, like, okay, if you want, like, communal living, but if you're like, oh, sorry, in order to live here, we have to shoot your dog, I'd be like, yeah, fuck you, never mind.
Yeah. No,
Absolutely the fuck not.
There's better options than that. Like, I can understand, we don't have the facilities to take care of dogs. If you want, we can help take care of you. We don't have the facilities to help take care of a dog. You're going to have to give up your dog.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be happy about that, but I would understand that, as opposed to, we can't take care of them, let's just shoot them.
Yeah. And the children during this time were treated even worse. One teenage girl was spanked with a paddle 75 times for supposedly having interacted with a lesbian. They also started hitting children.
Why is that a problem if everybody's gay, though?
Because
Isn't everyone she interacts with
like,
a lesbian then? Every woman a lesbian?
Because he's like, everybody, like, all of you people have homosexual tendencies, but if you showed them outwardly, you were punished for it because it wasn't okay to be homosexual.
But he's inclusive.
Yeah.
He wants to include all of your shame and differences so he can use them against you.
Mm-hmm. And so then they start pitting children against each other in boxing matches. If the wrong child won, they would keep bringing in other opponents until this child was finally beaten down and taught a lesson. It was one thing for the adults of the temple to engage in a fight club-like scene, but forcing this upon children as a form of entertainment was extremely cruel. But Jones wanted to make sure everyone knew that not even he was above punishment. So occasionally he would take some paddling or spanking. I love to mix words for whatever fucking reason because my brain reads faster than my mouth does. So I'll just mix words together.
No, that's my problem. That is why I have speech impediment. Spattling, add that to the thing.
Spattling. So,
he's just doing it because he's into it, though.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, he's just like,
and
I've been a bad leader. I've been such a bad leader.
But he would never, it was never for his own mistakes. He would get the punishments and then he'd be like, this is how much you hurt me. Like,
this hurts me more than it hurts you.
It's basically like, almost as further punishment for the church members. He's like, I'm just showing you how much you hurt me by breaking the rules.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think he's just doing it for his own kicks.
And then one member, they literally took his penis and they beat it with a hose because I guess he was caught molesting a child, which I'm not going to lie, if this man was actually molesting a child, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That's like that's the
if anybody does that, you should beat their hose with a hose. And the rest of them with a hose.
Yeah. And here's the thing, is like, do we know that this man was actually molesting a child? No, because there are a lot of accusations kind of thrown around by Jones. But if it was true, fuck that dude.
If it wasn't true, I am so sorry for this man.
That would be very bad. Construction in Jonestown around this time is going about as well as you would think when you put just a bunch of random Americans in the middle of a jungle and tell them that they need to build an entire town, clear a bunch of brush and trees, and start an agricultural movement.
They've put like the same wall up 6 times and it keeps falling down in different comical ways. Every time it falls down, there's someone standing precisely where the window is so they don't get hit.
Yeah, like in all
I've done
movies.
it 10 times.
With the U.S.-based church hardly giving them any money, they worked with faulty and broken equipment, no good scraps, and were struggling overall with their mission.
But it's a character building experience.
Without authorization, they decided to buy some new generators, a move which wasn't received very well by Jim Jones. They were finally able to use some of the wood in the jungle to build an open-wall pavilion where they would often hold meetings and they would engage in what was called the 3 Miracle Ceremony, where every person would say 3 miracles that Jim Jones had performed that week. Most of the time, they would have to make them up completely because they don't have 3 miracles each that fucking Jim Jones had done that week. But it was a tradition.
This is just like a, let's all tell Jim Jones how good this is Jim Jones being like, everybody tell me how good I am.
Like, Jim Jones isn't there in Guyana with them. They're just doing it because it's like tradition, and I think they're trying to hold on to like something good at this point and remember like the goodness of
why
Jim
they're
Jones
doing
and the
it.
mission. Yeah, because like they've been out there for months doing a bunch of shit.
Was this something that they were doing in California?
Yeah, it had been instituted in California, and they brought it with them to Guyana. Ugh.
Ugh, I hate that.
Yeah, they felt it was necessary for this practice to continue so they didn't lose sight of their mission and the good work that Jim Jones was doing, despite how frustrated they were at times. Jim Jones would send tape recordings of his sermons down to Guyana every month for his members there, but he didn't visit the Jonestown settlement for many months and didn't make it a habit to frequently check on his members there. They truly didn't have enough money to perform the actions which Jones asked of them, one time even having to shut down all of their construction machinery for 2 weeks until they could scrape together enough cash to buy some diesel fuel. When Jones came to visit, they begged him for more funds to continue with the mission, but he replied, "I am bleeding for you, and all you can talk about is the damn money. I'm bleeding the money." Which is stupid because we have to remember, with all of his church merch, this man is making thousands of dollars a weekend selling fucking fake ass like pictures and scraps
Money
of cloth.
doesn't grow on trees.
And he's making thousands of dollars off of the income of all of his members, and he's saving a lot because they're living in communities now.
Yeah, and like, what is he using all of this money
He's
for?
not.
If
He's hoarding it. Yeah, it's goofy. While there were many instances of harmful cult-like activities from Jim Jones in the People's Temple, he was also still doing good in his community. During one event, he merged the People's Temple in multiple Muslim organizations, bringing everyone together and preaching on peace and brotherhood. And in another instance, when a chain of hotels sought to evict poor and unhoused families who had been staying there for an extended period of time, the People's Temple rallied against the massive corporation and fell on the side of the families in need of housing.
Here's my dilemma with the People's Temple is that there's certain things that they're doing that I'm like, yes, this is good. I see why you're doing this. I approve of this. But they're going about it in the most terrible ways and they're treating each other terrible. It's like, yes, stand up for people that have been evicted who have to stay somewhere long term.
Right.
You know, yes, help out homeless people. Yes, take care of the elderly and people in your community. Don't gaslight everybody and fake your own death and be racist and toxic and all that. And it's like, there's good things, but and I think that's how it became so, like, it got its roots into so much stuff. It's tendrils because people are attracted by seeing all the good stuff, and then once they're in and it's too late, they start seeing all the bad stuff.
And he can do like 4 really shitty things, but then he'll go do one really good thing, and everyone's like, "Oh, see, he is good, great," and then they decide to stay because he did that one good thing.
Yeah, and if that's also what he's publicizing is the good stuff, you know, if he's being super shitty and abusive to people in one location, the people in the other location aren't going to see everything he's doing over there. And also, if he's being super toxic to the inner circle, the people in the outer circle aren't seeing that. They're only seeing that he's helping people and stuff, or people that are interested in joining the church are only seeing that he's helping people.
Right. So, while there were quite a few important temple members who had defected from the church, such as the Gang of 8, most people that were very close to Jones, who knew everything about his shady business, remained part of the temple. This was until Grace Stone decided to leave the church in 1976. Grace was finally fed up with the fact that her marriage to Tim Stone had fallen apart. She was forced to proclaim that her child was Jim Jones's, and had to basically give up her child to be raised communally. She had been constantly degraded over the years and was just sick of it. Grace wanted to get her child out of the temple too, but Jim Jones wouldn't allow it. Not to mention that Tim was still a member of the church and also advocated for his son to stay. At the age of 3.5, John Victor Stone were swearing, just as Jim Jones did when he was younger, and had intense anti-capitalist views.
Are they giving him soda for swearing and cookies or whatever it was that...
No, they can't afford those.
Right. They're just giving them to him.
Yeah, they don't even give the children birthday presents or celebrate their birthdays. They do like this thing where like there's a monthly birthday thing, and they're like everybody whose birthday is this month happy birthday.
That's just what your family does. I don't know if your family ever did that, but it was like, if your birthday's in May, it's like, everybody choose what kind of cake you want. It's always chocolate. It's always chocolate.
Yeah. Every time.
And we're going to do something for everybody's birthday. Mm-hmm. But at least everybody gets their own presents. But it's just like, oh, you got a May birthday? Okay,
yeah,
happy birthday.
It's basically, we're going to take you to the zoo and you can each have a cookie as a treat. Mm-hmm. But
I get to pick the flavor.
They even dressed little John Victor Stone up to look like a mini Jim Jones. Jim Jones would call Grace and tell her that she was doing the right thing by leaving her son behind, saying that he would have been a mental case if she had taken him away from all that he knew, and a whole community was better for raising him than just one parent. They told Grace that she was not allowed to have John, but when they moved to South America, she could come visit him. They handed her a round-trip ticket to Guyana.
So, let me just make sure I understand. She left the church.
Yeah.
And is Tim the father?
Tim is the father of John. Like, he's on the birth certificate.
But what I'm saying is, he's still in the church or no? I can't remember.
Yeah, he's still in the church at this point.
So
he's
mother
also
gone, father still here.
Yeah.
Jim Jones claiming to be the father.
Right.
Okay.
And so they're like, no, Grace, you cannot take your child. But they're like, hey, we're going to move. When we move to Guyana, you can come visit him. So they hand her a round-trip ticket to Guyana. And when she takes this ticket, it's almost a nonverbal confirmation that this agreement was okay. And with Tim's permission, little John Victor Stone would be sent to Guyana. Jones begins to talk constantly about a possible mass suicide, a final stance against the world. If the People's Temple was going down, that they wanted to be the ones in control. Though some members were worried about his plans for mass suicide, many actually seemed open to the idea, but perhaps they were just afraid to stand up to Jones because he was constantly threatening to have them shot for disobeying.
This on my own terms doesn't seem like it's on your own terms, though.
No, not really.
You're like, oh, we're going to die
on Jim Jones' terms.
Whether we have a say in it or not, whether it's on other people's terms or Jim Jones' terms, it's not on our individual terms.
Right, exactly. So when another close member to Jones, Joyce Shaw, ended up defecting from the church, and she was really kind of close in the inner circle with Jones and was the one that actually took care of Mr. Muggs a lot. Her husband, Bob Houston, begged her to come back to the church. He even recorded their phone conversations. But suspecting that Bob may have been persuaded to also defect and join Joyce, Bob was found dead at his job site as a railroad worker. Although ruled as an accident, Joyce and Bob's family suspected the church was involved in his death. The railway had received Bob's resignation, and I put that in air quotes, the day before, a typed out document with Bob's signature at the bottom.
And it also said, by the way, Jim Jones is the most amazing man ever to live, and he's so beautiful and handsome and strong, and I just couldn't live without being around him for 2 seconds.
Yeah, it wasn't Bob who typed it out, because according to Joyce, he didn't even really type ever. Yeah, so the railway had received Bob's resignation the day before, a typed out document with Bob's signature at the bottom. Only it wasn't Bob who typed it out. It was one of those blank sheets of paper they were forced to sign at the temple. And the temple had drawn up the resignation for him.
Now, why would you think that the temple is involved in this? What would make you think that? Let's think here. Is it A, the fact that the church had a bunch of blank documents signed by them to write out letters? Is it B, because you're crazy and paranoid? Is it C, because you're making stuff up? Which one is it?
So, church members actually told Joyce at the funeral that if she were to try and get custody of her and Bob's children, they would submit a letter that she had supposedly signed to the police. A letter that stated both her and Bob were responsible for abusing the children that lived in the church commune the couple ran. This letter blackmailed Joyce, Bob, and Bob's family by producing allegations of sexual and physical abuse against children at the People's Temple.
This is another one of those blank signed papers?
Yeah. because they can literally just
all of a
claim
sudden-
anything about you because your signature's at the
Yeah.
bottom.
That's kind of an interesting thing about, like, legal documents, because I was looking something up a while ago, and basically, like, if two people's signature is on something, like, if, you know, it could be considered legally binding.
Right.
So, like, if I were to write out a thing that's, like, so-and-so owes me, like, if I were to say, you owe me whatever money, like, for this job.
Yeah.
For this, you know, offshoot job, I sign it, and then you sign it, that could be considered legally binding.
Yeah.
So and probably even more so back then.
Yeah, I think that if you had just that one person sign it, because I'm sure someone at the People's Temple is also signing it a lot
as, like,
of the time as, like,
notarizing.
a witness, you know? So Stephen Jones, in his sophomore year of high school, attempts to commit suicide again by taking a full bottle of Quaaludes when he thought the church was empty of people. What he didn't know was that Jones was still at the church and found his son unconscious on the floor and called for help. His stomach was pumped, Stephen was moved to San Francisco into his own apartment, and he began to actually get happier now that he was away from his father. That was until his father forced him to go to Guyana and help with the Jonestown setup.
I don't like that you're being happy outside of my control. We
Pretty
can't
much.
have that.
Another one of Jones's sons, Lou Jones, one of his first adopted children, was sent to Jonestown along with his entire family, even though his wife was very pregnant at the time and they didn't want to go. Marceline felt heartbreak both of these times. She had advocated for her children to stay in California with them, but of course Jones didn't listen to her. Grace Stone at this point finally divorces Tim Stone. This worries both Tim and Jim because they worry she will win the custody battle over John Victor Stone. Tim decides to go to Guyana, where his son is, to hide out. And luckily, Jim Jones has signed statements from both Tim and Grace that state Jones has permission to take John Victor Stone overseas. And when I say luckily, I mean luckily for him, but not for anybody else. They don't have that much of a leg to stand on as long as Tim is still supporting the Jonestown thing, and now they have the signed documentation that say both parents are okay that he's there. What is she gonna do?
There's certain things that they're not planning out, like the entirety of Jonestown, but the way that Jim Jones is planning the control of people is terrifying.
Yeah. He is very clearly thought it out, and he has a lot of people close to him that will help him execute these plans. Jones begins to discuss plans to move 1,000 church members to the community that is Jonestown, but they only have room for about 200 people so far, so he has to wait a little bit longer before the mass exodus.
Just send them all there. They can build their own houses. It'll be a character building experience.
And in an ironic turn of events around this time, due to their social and political influence, Jones and the People's Temple members were asked to help with a movement to prevent suicide. Jones agrees, and members of the People's Temple show up at the Golden Gate Bridge, each wearing an armband inscribed with the name of someone who had committed suicide. He even admits during this event that he has struggled with thoughts of suicide and expressed his concern for those who experience suicidal ideation.
I mean, it's a good place to do it. Because I think that's, like, the highest rate of suicide is, like, off the Golden Gate Bridge. But it's just yikes.
Yeah,
The fact that
the irony of it.
I wonder
like,
if
hey,
it's
don't
triggered by
suicide.
his son, but also, like, he's talking before that happened, before all this, he's like, what if we all just kill ourselves?
Yeah, and
what if just for funsies?
He's
what
been
if
doing
this
poison tests where he's like, oh, what if all of this drink that I gave all of you guys had poison in it? You know?
You'll be fine. It's just strychnine.
And at this point, even though Tim Stone was still following Jones, he thought about leaving the church constantly. He even started working with Grace to place custody of John Victor Stone in her hands. While Grace wanted to approach the matter legally, Tim wanted to negotiate with Jones himself, contemplating offering to stay with the temple forever as long as they let his son go. The Jonestown commune begins to grow even more to the point where it can support more people, so it's time for the mass exodus. So as busloads of People's Temple members made the trip to the airport to hop on a plane to Guyana, Jones instructed them to leave quietly. Some People's Temple members told their family that they were going on vacation. Others said nothing at all and left their family wondering where they went. Some submitted resignation letters at their job. Others just stopped showing up. But none were honest about the fact that they were making a one-way trip to Guyana to join the Jonestown commune. While the temple radio waves aired propaganda about Jonestown, convincing members to fly to Guyana to join the community, the members that arrived had their enthusiasm curbed upon arrival. The soil was poor and the agricultural mission had failed. There was hardly any food, poorly built homes that were going to be overcrowded. The trees bore no fruit, and the nearest body of water was 7 miles away, so they could not fish or swim. There was no living in Jonestown, only surviving, and it took a lot to survive. The workforce of Jonestown comprised of nearly 950 members at this point, 2/3 of it female, and only 25% were white. Nearly 300 were children. So he has gathered a whole lot of minority, whether they're like female or just they had a very high black population. I think over 70% of their members at this point were black. And then they also had like, you know, a spattering of other races in there. But there are not a lot of like white men in this commune at this point.
Which is Jim Jones has to be the one with the power and the privilege.
It's very intentional. He's like, he would literally be like, I wish I wasn't a white man. I would rather be one of you. But at the same time, he's very much like, oh, I'm so glad I'm one of the only white men.
So what I'm hearing is because most of the population of the church was not white, he's not sleeping with everybody. Just a tiny little fraction of people. It's not that bad.
Yeah, he's only sleeping with... No, there's like 950. So even if only 100 of them are like white women, that leaves a lot of options.
Yeah, it's only 100, not 900.
Because you know that he's like sleeping with most of them, except for poor Patty Cartmel, because according to him, she's too fat. I hate this man.
I want to kick his teeth in every time I see a picture of him with his like, he's like a little swoopy haircut.
Yeah.
And like a little cheeky smile. I just want to like kick his teeth in.
With some agricultural adjustments, they finally began growing a variety of foods and eventually raised over 100 pigs for pork and over 1,000 chickens for eggs and meat.
They have grown grass and more grass and tree and possibly
tree.
A different tree and possibly a poisonous mushroom. We don't know. We'll feed it to Betty and find out. It's so agriculturally diverse.
They sold animal products to help fund the commune and eventually set up a kitchen that contained fridges, freezers, and stoves. They had well-stocked and a well-manned medical center where there was always a nurse on call. It contained a dispensary for medications, and all members received routine medical examinations, which included thorough documentation. They had built a school for the children and even a nursery for the younger kids. Life seemed to be developing and getting better at Jonestown. One might feel just a glimmer of hope for the future, living in a socialist utopia.
How are they getting the medications to... Because I know they have doctors and stuff, but how are they getting... Because I'm assuming in different countries the medication rules would be different. How are they getting all...
Honestly,
like, what they need in for different people?
In Guyana, I don't... For a lot, like, I think you would just go...
It was also the 70s, and you could get, like...
Like, I don't think it was that hard.
Quaaludes over the counter.
Yeah. To work at Jonestown was still... very difficult. Everyone except the elderly were expected to put in a hard day's work. And of course, at some point, they would start forcing the elderly to work as well. But they still found time for leisure by reading books from the library, playing music and dancing, and hosting guests. Behind the scenes, the abuse continued at Jonestown. The sleep deprivation, the physical abuse, the mental abuse, and more. People's heads were shaved as punishment. One man had a hot pepper shoved up his rectum. A child who had soiled his diaper was forced to wear the soiled cloth on his head. Some children were made to watch others eat while they sat hungry. Children were sometimes lowered into a pit and made to dig at the mud from sunup until sundown. Individuals who had been injured were told they still had to work, and when they begged to stop...
Walk it off.
When they begged to stop, the guards of Jonestown threatened to shoot them. Those who refused to work were beaten, sometimes so severely they had to escape in the night and seek medical attention at the hospital. Some defectors...
The hospital in Jonestown or the hospital in, like...
No, like...
The actual...
In
like,
Georgetown in Guyana. Like, they had to hike through miles of the jungle, being severely beaten. And, like, this one man literally had to, like, escape, hide out in some Guyanese household... and go to the hospital in Georgetown the next day.
I guess that's a really good way of controlling people of like, well, we're going to hurt you and punish you, and we're not going to give you medical attention you desperately need for the wounds we inflicted on you if you're going to act badly. Until you start acting good, we're not going to give you medical attention.
Yeah, around this time, so, you know, his main mistress is Caroline Layton. Her sister, Debbie Layton, at this point, is like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Goodbye. And so she defects, and she even... And this really fucking sends Jones into, like, oh, fuck, what are we going to do? Because Debbie knows a lot of information. And she describes Jonestown as being a concentration camp. Even if they wanted to leave, most people didn't have the means to escape. The church began smuggling weapons into Guyana, which launched an investigation into the church, but they were ultimately able to invade customs and smuggle dozens of weapons into the country. They used people in wheelchairs, deployed women to flirt with customs agents, found excuses for their planes not to get searched, etc. Customs eventually abandoned their investigation, and even though Customs abandoned their investigation, private investigators and journalists began to look more into Jim Jones and the People's Temple, getting many defectors to tell all about their experience at the church. This shook up the community at Jonestown, but the thing that seemed to rattle them the most was the custody battle over Grace and Tim's son, John Victor Stone. At this point, Tim Stone, who was on Grace's side, was an enemy of the church. And they were pissed at Tim Stone. Like, they would start blaming him for every single thing that would happen at Jonestown. They'd be like, this is fucking Tim Stone's fault. Like, he's enemy number one.
Even if there's no way he could have, like, it rains and their crops mold and he's like, Tim Stone.
Yeah, basically. And they would also start calling John Victor Stone the Godchild. So he's become basically just like...
The devil has birthed the Godchild.
A really important part of Jonestown, and, like, there's no fucking way they were letting Tim and Grace Stone take this child away from us. Okay. The legal system, basically, so they went to court. The legal system agrees that John Victor Stone should be with his mother. And this sends Jim into a frenzy. He's telling everyone at Jonestown that the government was coming to take away all of their kids. Though probably faked, a rifle was shot at Jim Jones, and he claimed people had come to kill him. He instructed the people at Jonestown to take up their weapons, smear mud on their face, and get ready for war. And essentially, what had happened is he convinces Stephen Jones to go into the jungle, shoot at him, act like he had got in a knife fight with the shooter. So Stephen Jones literally cuts himself across the chest to make it look like he just got in a knife fight. He comes back from the jungle. Jones is like, okay, this man just tried to murder me, but my son ended up, like, getting in a knife fight with him, and we killed this man. And then everyone was like, whoa, where's the body? And then Jones literally told them that he put it in the soup. And this made, like, several people sick. Because they thought that they had fucking, like, eaten somebody.
Body soup.
But anyway, so the courts tell Jones, hey, you need to surrender John Victor Stone.
You need to not kidnap people. And he's like, but I don't wanna.
Jim he won't show up to any of the court dates. He's not complying at all. So they send a U.S. Marshal out to Jonestown, and he's like, hey, I'm looking for Jim Jones. They're like, he's not here. So he basically posts a note on Jim Jones's cabin or whatever that is a warrant for John Victor Stone, like, hey, you need to give up this child, otherwise we could take legal action against you.
And Jim Jones is like, But we're in a different country. This isn't America. You can't use American laws on us.
And so basically now this sends him into like full panic mode. If they can take one child from us, they're going to come back and take all of our children. You guys don't want all of your children taken, do you?
They're just giving him more ammunition.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so that's when he basically fakes the shooting, and then he's like, hey, the government has sent mercenaries out to kill me, and they're going to kill all of you too. And so this is what starts what was called the 6-day siege, and where he rounded everyone up at the pavilion.
And this was the inspiration for Black Friday.
He rounded everyone up at the pavilion. He gave everyone weapons. He's like calling alert, alert, alert over the loudspeakers. He had them like form this giant circle around the commune, and he literally kept them up for 2 entire days, protecting the compound. And then after 2 days of everyone being awake. Yeah. After 2 days of everyone being awake, and he made sure they were awake because he was constantly like calling alerts, saying how the mercenaries were going to come, how were going to have all of their children taken away, just freaking all these people out. They had like mud on their faces. They were ready to attack anyone that came into Jonestown. And then all of a sudden he's like, guys, we need to get on a boat and go to Cuba. And so he makes everybody who has stayed up for 48 fucking hours.
Hasn't Cuba already said, we don't want you though?
He tried to get the people from Cuba to go to Indiana.
That's what it was.
But now...
And nobody wants to go to Indiana.
He's doing a switcheroo. So he's like, we need to take a boat to Cuba. So he basically makes all of his extremely sleep-deprived members who have been up for like fucking 48 hours, he makes them hike through like miles of jungle out to a boat. He's
what is this, the military?
Up into the boat. And this old woman literally breaks her hip because people are like just fucking piling onto this boat. There's not enough room for everybody because there's hundreds of people, and so he's like, oh, never mind guys, we're not going to go to Cuba, and makes all of them hike back. And he basically just like puts them through a crazy fucking amount of turmoil. What about the woman with
the broken hip? He's like, hike back?
Yeah, literally. Yeah, he's absolutely fucking cruel. And he's continued to tell everyone,
the whole
like...
sleep deprivation thing is, like a torture and control tactic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because he's not getting sleep either. He's, like...
Well, he's also just on all of the drugs, though, and he's like, well, I can do it. You guys can, too, despite the fact that he's just fueled by amphetamines and spite.
Mm-hmm. And he's telling everyone that Tim Stone has sent these mercenaries to kill everybody. And so he keeps everyone in like this kind of in-between state of like sometimes they're sleeping, but he's like calling alerts all the time and making them like grab their weapons and preparing them for an attack. And this goes on for 6 entire days until he finally calls it off. But this is when he would start doing what he would call white nights, which is basically he would call alerts over the system and say, this is a white knight, or he would use like a code word. And this basically meant that everybody had to take up their weapons and get in formation and fight for Jonestown. And he would start calling for white knights all of the time, basically forcing people to, lose sleep, whether it was early in the morning or late at night or in the middle of the night.
I mean, you break their mentality, you can build them back up however you want.
Yeah, he basically told anyone that didn't want to fight that he would order them to be killed. So if they didn't get up during a white night and grab their weapons and get into formation, then he would have somebody shoot them. So they kind of didn't really have a choice. Over the radio, he would claim to have been shot, yelling, I'm hit, I'm hit. And then he'll say, don't take offensive action. We want peace. We just want asylum somewhere. There are people trying to negotiate, trying to contact the socialists we trust. So don't do anything rash.
But we want a war. We want a war.
Basically saying like, hey, we're doing this to defend ourselves, but do not take the offensive. Do not attack anybody. You have to let them attack first. We want them to think that we're peaceful. We're only doing this because we want freedom. But, of course, there's nobody fucking there attacking them. Mm-hmm. It's all in his head, so he's just mental.
Yeah. But he's not delusional or paranoid.
And then, of course, during this 6-day siege, Jones calls Marceline and basically tells her that
she's not in Guyana?
No, she actually, for a majority of the time, stays in California.
I thought she was, like, this whole time, like, with him.
No, like, he's brought his sons down there, and he's down there, and he's brought a whole bunch of other members down there. She basically stays in, like, this little apartment in San Francisco, because, I mean, well, she's still seen as a mother figure to the church. Her and Jones, like, even when she's in Jonestown, she has her own cottage. They don't live together. He lives with his mistresses. Like, they don't sleep together at this point. Like,
they're legally together and that's it.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, she's kind of disgusted with him at this point.
Fair.
Yeah.
I mean, she was kind of disgusted with him at, like, year 3 or year 1 or whatever.
Year 1, basically. Like, as soon as after they got married, she was like, oh, fuck, what have I done?
Yeah.
But they call her in California during this event, and he's like, we're going to commit revolutionary suicide because these people are out to get us, and we'd rather kill ourselves than submit to the government. And Marceline began to cry and plead with him and say, don't do this, because she knew Jim was desperate enough to carry out the order. Jim even put his kids on the phone with Marceline, Jim Jr. and Steven, and they both said that, you know, we're okay dying, it's okay. But, of course, they were probably forced to say this. Marceline decided that she was going to spend hours contacting the Guyanese government and asking them to back off, just so that this mass suicide at Jonestown would not occur. The portion of the church in California wanted to support Jones.
Guyana, the Guyanese government, is just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, they're like, we haven't done shit. Like, what the fuck? Like, literally, what are you talking about? We've done nothing.
We're, in fact, giving them resources.
Yeah. So the portion of the church in California wanted to support Jones, but they were also devastated by the news. They didn't want their family members or fellow church members to die. So Jonestown received multiple calls as word reached out about their stance against the government. A prominent communist, Angela Davis, called in to praise Jones and say she supported his movement. A Black Panther leader, Huey Newton, showed his support for Jim Jones over the phone as well. And the final phone call came from Dr. Carlton Goodlett saying the Guyanese government had no right to come after Jones and that he should stand strong. These messages only reinforced his delusions that standing up to the government by threatening a mass suicide was a great idea.
I wonder if the government of Guyana at this point, since nothing is like happen, like they're not doing anything, is like, okay, we're seriously concerned about this, maybe we need to start taking action. Or are they just like, oh, these people are just being nuts?
Well, they can't really do anything. These are American citizens in their country. There's not much that they can do. So they're kind of like, yeah, U.S. Embassy, if you want to come fucking check on your people. But they haven't broken any Guyanese laws at this point. They've broken a U.S. law by keeping John Victor Stone, but they've broken no Guyanese laws. So the Guyanese government is like, there isn't shit we can do. Like, we're not going out there. We're not trekking into the jungle to go check on these people. Like, this is a U.S. problem.
Gotcha. Until they break our laws.
Right. There's nothing we can do. After contacting the FBI and several other important officials, Marceline and other temple members relayed to Jonestown that the Guyanese government would not invade Jonestown and that Jim Jones would not be arrested, putting an end to the 6-day siege. But at this point, many temple members had proved that they were ready to die for the cause, and he realized he could use this tactic to get what he wanted. Although a second warrant was issued for Jones's arrest, no action was taken. The Guyanese ambassador said it would cause unfavorable media coverage, and since the temple hadn't technically violated any Guyanese laws, there was nothing they could do. Which is what you were just saying. Mm-hmm. Anyone who criticized Jones for being overly dramatic and threatening mass suicide was met with the response from Jones that it was his emotional followers who had pushed him to make that decision. So he blamed it on the people, saying it was their decision.
Okay.
So after hearing about the mass exodus, many family members of Jonestown residents worked with the U.S. Embassy to convince their loved ones to come home. Some even traveled to Guyana to try and rescue their loved ones and their children, but often didn't have any luck.
But first they had to find out where Guyana was, because nobody knows.
Get there. They don't have Google Maps, they're just pulling out a world map. Okay, where the fuck is this place at?
They end up in Guam.
Life at Jonestown went from watching movies together to watching propaganda films about the Soviet Union, in which attendance was mandatory. and everyone was tested on the material afterward.
Also, what is movies but propaganda films in a different form?
Okay.
Tell me I'm wrong, though.
I'm going to watch every movie from here on out in a completely different manner.
You can tell I had one too many weird teachers.
The ritual he would call White Night, in which everyone would take up arms and be ready for the mass suicide, happened often. His voice would sound over the loudspeakers, and he would call everyone to the pavilion. When everyone was there, Jones would give them weapons, and they would fall into formation to defend Jonestown.
I know what you mean by his voice sounding over the loudspeaker, but I picture him, like, making artificial alarm noises, just, like, going into it, going, wah, 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 alert, 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 wah, 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 this is an alert, wah, wah, wee, wee, wee.
He's all, wee, the mercenaries are out to kill me, they're out to collect your children, wee.
Wee, propaganda, wee.
So, in Jonestown, anyone who was gay was openly ridiculed and was not allowed to sleep with members of the same sex. And they just started creating, like, some of the craziest fucking punishments. And the reason we know about a lot of this is because Debbie Layton, the defector, was telling about a lot of these really cruel punishments that would happen at Jonestown, which is what really alerted the press and the concerned family members to a lot of the shit that was going down there.
I say this sarcastically, but I love that just all of queer history is just super depressing. Like,
yeah. One of the worst punishments was the sensory isolation box, a 4-foot tall, 10-foot wide shipping crate made of plywood that had been placed in a ditch.
And it was just an office cubicle.
The first victim of this punishment was still able to hear the news from the camp and see a little light through the cracks in the container, but was unable to stand up and was only given some water and disgusting mashed up food and kept there for an entire week. Some members were drugged and then put in the box. And each time they were released, they were expected to say the experience transformed them and they had come out better. Jim Jones's mother, who had lived in Jonestown for a long time, got sicker and sicker and eventually passed away.
Why is she just like why was she... Is it just because she was a support, like, she was like, that's my son, I'm going to support him? Like, why is she...
Pretty much.
Because she was like, I don't believe in organized religion or a sky god.
I mean...
This whole, like, from the get-go.
Well, that he got that from his mother.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like... And then he was like, I'm going to be a preacher and a pastor.
Yeah, but now at this point, he's told his church that he doesn't believe in God. And, like, most of the church members also don't believe in God anymore. They only believe in Jim Jones.
Okay, and is it maybe because she was like, I want my son to be the greatest man alive?
It's mainly because, like, he's her only son. She's old. Who else is going to take care of her?
That's fair.
And she really enjoyed living in Guyana because she loved the wildlife and she loved living out in the jungle. But it was also a problem for her health. And so eventually...
wasn't her whole thing, like, pre-Jim Jones being born, like, I want to go live my life and travel and explore.
Pretty much.
So I guess it's giving her the options of...
But anyway, she finally passes away, and this has a massive negative effect on Jones.
I can imagine.
So he gets even fucking crazier at this point. One member who tried to commit suicide, Jones was really upset about this. He had the other members berate him and beat him for hours for wanting a way out. He screamed at the man about how he had just lost his mother and how dare he try to take his own life when there had already been a loss, which is kind of an ironic turn of events because he's like berating this man for committing suicide, but he brings up mass suicide all the time.
It's like, how dare you commit suicide without the rest of us?
Yeah, exactly.
And on my terms.
Jones tries to convince his son Stephen to fake the kidnapping of John Victor Stone, to stuff him in a sack, take off, and pretend to get in a fight with the fake kidnapper, and then save the child, which I have save in air quotes, to play the hero. Thankfully, Stephen and the stand-in mother for John Victor Stone, which I believe her name is Maria Katsaris, I believe she was looking over John Victor Stone, acting as his mother at this point. And she's a huge influential member because later on when concerned members come to the compound of Jones, it's her father and her brother who are like really fighting for the concerned relatives to go to the compound, and her brother Anthony Katsaras is one of the main people that
the
comes to
outside
visit.
people that are like, we're worried about y'all.
Yeah, the concerned relatives. So she's the one that's been looking after John Victor Stone a lot, and both her and Stephen agree that this was really cruel to do to this little child. So they decide to stand up against Jones and say, we're not doing this. He's like 6 at this point. 5 or 6.
The godchild,
John Victor Stone. Yeah, he's only 6 or 7. Or, 5 or 6 at this point.
Okay, because that's what I was thinking when you said tiny child, but I was like, I just want to make sure that that's what you meant and not like he's 2.
No, he's a little older than that at this point, but he's still a small child.
Yeah.
One white night.
One night white?
White, no, what?
What do you mean?
They rhyme. I've had to say it so many times.
The amount of times I've said seat heater or heat seater instead of seat heater and just kept rolling. Don't feel bad.
One white night, Jones had a little too much brandy and told the girl who was serving him, "Smile, bitch, or I'll pour some up your vagina." To which the crowd burst out in laughter. Jones was known to humiliate, make lewd comments, joke about having sex with various women, put down the sexual exploits of others while inflating his own.
Oh, so he's a frat bro.
Yeah, and he would even make some members strip naked in front of everyone to embarrass them. But then everyone's like, oh, it's just all in good fun. Like, anytime he's, like, making fun of somebody like that, everyone's just laughing. Boys? I guess.
Is everyone just laughing because everyone's so incredibly uncomfortable with this man? Or...
Yikes. So, when Marceline would come visit the compound, she has her own little cottage of her own because Jones is living with his mistresses. She would smile and act like the good wife and mother in front of other temple members, but behind closed doors she would exclaim that she loved Jones more as a sick child than as a husband, and that his drug abuse was out of hand and he disgusted her when he made sexual comments about her. So a lot of the concerned family members that, were concerned about people that were living in Jonestown
were family members who were concerned.
Yeah.
Yes. We have the concerning family members and the concerned family members.
So the concerned family members were contacting the U.S. Embassy frequently, and the government knew about this talk of mass suicide because Debbie Layton had told them about it. There was a general misunderstanding of laws between the embassy and the Guyanese government. Communication between different sections of the government were so poor that no one had all of the information. They also assumed that the threat of mass suicide was simply to maintain control and weren't sure if allegations from ex-members were true because they had received contradictory information from Jonestown. The Guyanese government also felt that they had no control to act against a group of American citizens, and reports from the embassy also lacked a ton of information because they misunderstood the newly enacted Freedom of Information Act and were afraid church members could access their reports about Jonestown.
Do you know when suicide was no longer like a crime in the U.S.?
I have no idea.
Because I'm trying to look that up. Because I was curious if this would be, at this point, if this would be considered like conspiracy to commit a criminal act. Or like if there's any way they could...
Not at this point because no one's fucking doing anything about it.
But I also wonder if they're not doing anything about it because they're in a different country.
Yeah, could also be. And also Jonestown was like way out
in the middle
there.
Of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. And then around this time, Jones starts discussing possibly doing another max exodus, this time to the Soviet Union. So he even started Russian language drills. But ultimately...
In Russia, you don't drink Flavor Aid. Flavor Aid drink you. I can't do a Russian accent.
I'm not even going to attempt it. I guess he was kind of giving his followers 3 options. He's like, we could either, 1, move to the Soviet Union because communism, and he actually had really good relations with the Soviet Union representative who lived in Guyana. They were really close, and he was seriously considering possibly moving to the Soviet Union.
Well, it's probably where he's getting all these propaganda films, Soviet propaganda films
absolutely.
From. It's just like, hey, we ran out of movies. We've seen Gone with the Wind 2,000 times. Do you have anything we can watch? And he's like, I got you.
Yeah. And so he gives his followers, like, basically 3 options and has them vote. He's like, we could either move to the Soviet Union, we could commit mass suicide, or we can fight people and defend Jonestown.
Or a secret 4th option.
But really, no matter how people voted, he was going to choose anyway. But this was something that he was seriously considering for a moment. Jones began asking members of Jonestown to insult or threaten their family members over the radio. One member said she wished to kill her father by stringing him up by the balls and sticking a hot poker up his ass. Jones,
why?
I don't know.
She was just like, I just want to do this. I just feel like it.
He's basically forcing them to do this, and the more violent that they can think of and the most, like, perverted way they can think of, the better. So they're just coming up with all this crazy shit. Jones even forced little John Victor Stone, he's only 6 years old at this point, to go over the radio to exclaim he wanted to kill Grace and Tim Stone, saying, and then Victor's stand-in mother, Maria Katsaris, laughs and says into the radio, at only 6 years old, he wishes he could put a rope around Grace's titty and lower her down into the water and watch her drown.
Okay, that's hey,
terrible.
Mom, I want you to die. I want you to die, Mom. I've been told I want you to die.
Yeah, and he's being forced to say all this. He's only 6. I mean,
he doesn't understand what he's saying.
And then Jones would also train and coach every single member about what to say if the media ever interviewed them or if their family asked questions. And when I say everybody, I mean all, like, 900 of the people in Jonestown. He's going over thoroughly on what they should say if they were ever interviewed, just in case anybody ever asked them.
There's far better things they could be spending their time on that wouldn't be making everything worse.
Yeah. And he's controlling everything that goes in and out of Jonestown, too. They're not allowed to send letters without him saying. They're not allowed to call people. They're not allowed to do anything over the
Probably
radio.
censoring any letters that go out.
Yeah, he monitors everything, and he does censor it. He forces them to write certain things, and if there's something that he doesn't like, they get punished, and he won't allow them to communicate in that way. When Jones was afraid of that corporal punishment would reach the world outside of Jonestown, mainly because Debbie Layton was telling people, hey, they're putting all these people through these really crazy punishments. He began drugging people as punishment instead to alter their minds, correct behavior, and keep them subdued. Some of the drugs found at Jonestown included 10,000 injectables of antipsychotic, 20,000 doses of low-dose painkillers, 5,000 doses of Valium, 200 vials of injectable morphine, and thousands of doses of other drugs such as Quaaludes, anti-anxiety meds, habit-forming sleep aids, tranquilizers that are usually used in surgeries.
And that was just what Jim Jones was taking.
Honestly, he was probably taking all of them in combinations he should not have been taking.
He wanted to see what would happen if you mixed them.
Yeah. And so he's just drugging anyone that is acting out against him. Instead of him putting them through these corporal punishments, he's just fucking giving people drugs and, like, drugging them and shoving them places so they're subdued. And some of these medications...
That's just what the government does, man.
Some of these medications could cause hallucinations, suicidal ideation, and even death at high enough doses. He offered sedation to anyone who thought about suicide. He constantly spoke out against suicide for selfish reasons, but of course, they were expected to take their own lives if Jones commanded it. So it's only okay if Jones says it's okay.
You can't leave until I say the party is over?
Pretty much. And then Jones begins sleeping with a beautiful 19-year-old Shonda James, who Stephen believed was actually his first black lover. And at this time, I think Jones is like 46, so I don't know. I guess there's a first for everybody, but geez Louise, he's been sleeping with everybody at this point. And finally, he's like this 19-year-old girl, and he's like, oh, I'll sleep with her. Fucking creep.
Okay, dude.
He began sleeping with Shonda under the guise of counseling sessions to treat her suicidal ideations, of which she had none. and when she no longer wanted to sleep with him, he drugged her. He said Shonda was begging him to sleep with her, and being oppressed all her life as a black woman, he felt like he had to say yes. When Stephen confronted his father about keeping Shonda drugged, Stephen began to feel like he was being drugged, like Jones was slipping stuff in his food. So Stephen and his brother Tim even began thinking about killing their father, but Marceline told them not to, as they would soon inherit Jonestown, and hopefully everything would work out naturally. So this caused like a huge rift between Jones and some of his sons.
The darker this gets, the more I don't know I can keep making jokes about this, because there's not much I can do without... There's no room for jokes. It's just, yeah.
At one point it was like, okay, he's sleeping with all these people, but now he's like drugging a 19-year-old to sleep with her, and it's not great.
And drugging his kids, and just the whole... I'm gonna slap a big ol' yikes label on this whole situation.
Big ol' yikes.
Yeah.
Marceline was so worried about Jim's mental health and the state of his deviancy that she was worried he would sexually assault her sister, and even worried that he had already sexually assaulted some of the children in the commune.
I wouldn't be surprised, unfortunately.
So when Marceline's family arrived to visit Jonestown, they were appalled by Jones's physical appearance. He looked sickly and swollen, his speech was garbled, and he had trouble understanding reality.
Well, he's on literally every single drug at the same time.
That, and he also got this really bad lung infection, and I don't think he recovered fully from it, because from this point on, he looks like shit, he sounds like shit, his mind is gone.
He's not sleeping.
No.
Probably not eating well, is just spinning up into paranoid delusions, which the drugs aren't helping anything with, probably making him worse. And it's just a vicious spiraling
And
circle.
Even though they had like a bunch of animals and different foods that they're farming, they're really only eating a lot of meat when they have guests over for show. And so a lot of people are a little bit malnourished to some extent because they're not getting enough protein as well.
Yeah.
A few days after Marceline and her family arrived, the Jonestown basketball team traveled to Georgetown for a tournament. Temple members and Marceline cried when they left. Perhaps they felt like something was wrong. Jim Jones did not like the idea that the team, which included two of his sons, were going to be out of his reach for a while. Stephen and Jim Jones Jr.
Okay.
Yeah. And he tries to say, no, you can't go, but Marceline is like, absolutely not. This is important. It's going to make... She basically, in order to convince him, is like, this is going to make the temple look really good if they win. Mm-hmm. You need to let these boys go to Georgetown.
This is a publicity thing.
Yeah, and so she's able to convince him to let them go, which, I mean... in hindsight, was amazing on her part, and I think it's because she knew something bad was going to happen. Tim Stone decided the only way he might see his son again was to reach out to the government, so he met with 9 members of Congress. One congressman who was sympathetic to the cause and had heard some of the stories from Debbie Layton decided to help Tim Stone and other concerned relatives of Jonestown members. Congressman Leo Ryan, against the suggestion of the U.S. Embassy, decided he was going to meet the needs of concerned family.
I like that this guy has a first name for a last name.
Yeah.
Is his name Leo Ryan and then something else? Or is it just like Leo Ryan? Like Leo first name, last name Ryan? Or is it like Leo Ryan, whatever?
First name, last name Ryan.
I respect
Leo
that.
Ryan.
I respect a first name for a last name.
And they just call it the Ryan Party when he gathers up all these people to go to Guyana, which makes it really interesting. So he decides to bring some of these concerned family members to Guyana to go see the Jonestown commune. Ryan asked Jones to comply and allow family members to see each other as long as a few reporters. And he basically frames it as like, hey, if you let these family members go and see their other family members and you show the reporters that everybody's okay and Jonestown is a good place.
And you're not a cult.
Yeah, then everyone's going to back off and it's going to really be great for everybody. Jones denies it at first, but eventually, like, whatever new lawyer is in Jonestown, like one of his other members who happens to be a lawyer, convinces him, no, we should let these people into Jonestown. Feeling uncomfortable in Jonestown and worried about the state of the commune, Marceline parents actually decided to fly back to the States. So the Ryan party is heading down to Guyana. Jones even kind of jokingly makes a suggestion for his members to take down the Ryan party on their way to Jonestown.
He's like, haha, don't kill. Haha, we should kill him. Don't do that. But haha, what if we did kill him?
What if we did kill him?
Don't actually, for legal purposes, this is a joke, but what if we did, just for shits and gigs, just for shits and gigs,
because this Ryan party includes a congressman, which he is anti-government. It's news teams that have spoken like unfavorably against him in the past, and defectors. He fucking hates these people. Mm-hmm. And so the Ryan party includes NBC News team, the Washington Post, the San Francisco Examiner, several other journalists and media agents from like various different newspapers and such, mainly because he wanted really good coverage of this event, and he wanted it to be very well documented. He wanted people to be able to get multiple interviews with people from Jonestown and with Jim Jones himself. The flight also included Grace and Tim Stone, Bonnie, who was the Brazilian pastor Edward Melman. It was his daughter, who is still friends with Marceline at the time, Bob Houston's family, who was the man that died in that railway accident. It was his mother and sister who wanted to get Bob's children back from Jonestown, Jim Cobb and Mickey Touchette, who were two members of the Gang of Eight, who both had family members still residing in Jonestown, and many concerned parents whose young adult children had moved to Jonestown without their knowledge. They successfully arrived in Jonestown and made it through customs, but Jonestown members were waiting for them at the airport, eyeing them up and down as an intimidation tactic. When they got to the hotel, they found that all of the rooms were booked up and began to wonder if Jonestown booked them all so they had nowhere to stay. And were essentially told, like, hey, you can house the women here, and that's it. And then the men had to find other accommodations.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean when you said I am up and down. But I'm picturing, like, in a movie, they're, like, snapping, like, eyeing each other up and down.
There's just, like, in the bag.
Swinging a little chain around, trying to be all intimidating, like, looking them up and down. Ayo, toots, you don't belong on this block.
So Leo Ryan actually had to work hard for several days to gain access to Jonestown, and was eventually told he could only bring 4 of the concerned family members. So they chose Jim Cobb, Beverly Oliver, whose son was in Jonestown and had rapidly declining health, Anthony Katsaras, who was the brother of one of Jones's most important mistresses and the woman who cared for John Victor Stone, Maria Katsaras, and Carol Houston, who was a family member of Bob Houston. They took a very small plane closer to Jonestown, but weren't allowed into Jonestown immediately. Jonestown just had to yank their chain and deny entry before finally allowing them onto the compound. Jones looked like he wasn't able to even stand upon their arrival. He clearly wasn't doing well.
It's because he just couldn't stand that they were coming.
But the guests welcomed them with music, great food, and fruit punch.
And drugs. So many drugs.
Well, we all know that Jim was definitely on drugs. He was having a hard fucking time.
He's just a party guy.
All members were dressed in their Sunday best. Everyone seemed happy and lively, but it also felt really rehearsed.
Wait, I thought they weren't supposed to be wearing... Or has that changed? That like nobody wore their Sunday best or something?
They did it for the guests because they wanted everyone to see, like, the housing here is great, the food here is great, like, it's a celebration every day.
Gotcha.
Everyone is clean, they look good.
Okay,
it's to put on a show because we have a congressman and a bunch of news agents.
Okay, so they're wearing costumes. Yeah. Gotcha.
Not a single family member of the concerned relatives accepted an invitation to leave that night. Jones claimed they had completely eliminated ageism, racism, and sexism. They all took their turns in the fields and out in the sun. But the visitors couldn't help but notice all of the white leaders had inside complexions and didn't look very worn compared to the other members. So clearly the racism is still happening.
They're not racist. They have so many black people.
Jones was asked about the ban on sex, but he denied it and showed that 33 babies had been born in Jonestown in the past year.
And how many of them survived?
I don't actually know about that. They asked about him taking Social Security checks from members, to which he claimed they were allowed to cash their Social Security checks and use it however they wanted. It's just that all chose to donate their checks to the church. He said the only punishments were withholding sweets and TV time. And when they asked about his threats of mass suicide, he said it was a misunderstanding. They had only meant it would be better to commit suicide than commit acts of violence against others.
It's like, you just misunderstood every single thing I said. I didn't say any of that.
Yeah.
What I actually said was something entirely and fully different.
And he's basically like, oh, this information that you probably got from defectors, they're just saying a bunch of made up shit because they want to get back at us.
They're just trying to make us look bad.
So the visitors retire for the night, but then plan on making another trip to Jonestown the next day. The next day, they were given a tour of Jonestown, and there were a few members who secretly begged the visitors to get them out of Jonestown. As soon as a couple came forward, a lot started, well, maybe not like a lot, but over 20 people decided to finally come out.
A concerning amount.
Yeah, and say, you need to get us the fuck out of here, please. Like, we need to leave with you. And in front of reporters and an important congressman and other concerned family members, Jones couldn't resort to violence to keep these members. He simply had to rely on the bond he had with them and hopefully the guilt he instilled in them to force them not to leave. More and more members who wanted to leave began coming out of the woodwork. So they had to order another plane because they didn't have a way to transport that many members out. But this still left hundreds of members who wanted to stay because really only about a little over 20 members decided to defect that day. They visited the dormitory where elderly people lived and found that even though it was clean, it was severely overcrowded and the elderly people seemed to have the least desirable housing. But when interviewing the elderly, they only had positive things to say about their life in Jonestown, which of fucking course, because they're probably goddamn afraid or brainwashed. Mm-hmm. They asked Jones about all of the guns he supposedly smuggled in from the U.S.
These guns, my right gun and my left gun. Pow!
He's all standing on shaky legs trying to hold his arms up.
He's got like noodle arms. He's like, these guns. He's like whacked out. Everyone's like, I don't know what any of what you just said is. He's like, it's so happy and safe here.
And they're interviewing him and saying, hey, we have reports of semi-automatic weapons within the commune. But Jim denied this, saying there were no armed guards. They only had permits for a few guns.
They only have amputee guards. They don't have arms.
So there's no armed guards. They only have permits for a few guns that they use for hunting. He also claimed that the assassination attempts upon him were similar to those of Martin Luther King Jr., as he believed Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated by the government, and it was all the government conspiracy against them because they didn't like socialism. Because the government didn't like socialism. Obviously, Jim Jones really liked socialism.
It's against me because me and the government don't like socialism.
One of the temple members threatened to actually kill Leo Ryan with a knife and even held it against him, kind of poking it into him. Ryan thought it was a joke at first, thinking it was like a needle poking him, until the man became more forceful and made the threat on his life. There was a scuffle, and the only one who ended up with a minor cut was the man who had threatened Leo Ryan's life. The man was arrested, and Jones feared it would negatively affect the visitors' view of the temple. So after this happened, it really put Joan on edge because he's like, great, they're going to have like this fucking negative view about the temple and it's going to fuck up everything. He's really starting to think like, oh shit, what are we going to do?
Kool-Aid time?
Yeah, we're getting close.
Oh,
so,
no.
They left Jonestown with a group of defectors, so worried the entire way to the airstrip that Jones is going to send security to attack them at any minute. When they began boarding defectors onto the plane, they did a full-body pat-down of each member just in case any one of the defectors was secretly still a Jonestown loyalist and sought to harm or take down the others. In the middle of boarding the plane, they looked over and saw 2 temple vehicles with over a dozen members standing outside of them. Surely this was either an intimidation tactic or an attack, because they wouldn't have sent these people to say goodbye. When the planes were nearly boarded,
goodbye
all of a sudden...
to your life!
When the planes were nearly boarded, all of a sudden shots rang out. Larry Layton, one of the defectors, was in on the attack. He assisted with the shooting. People hit the ground and started screaming. Bullets littered the scene, hitting many people around them. Bodies dropped and blood spurted everywhere. This was an attack that was meant to have no survivors. Those who had been shot but still survived looked in horror as they realized many of the journalists and news crew members had been shot and killed. All but a few defectors had fortunately survived the attack, though some were badly injured. The survivors grouped together and ran towards some tall grass to hide. The attack continued, trying to hunt down anyone who tried to run and hide, but soon the group took off. Guyanese citizens came almost immediately, trying to fight back and help the wounded. The defector, Larry Layton, that had secretly been in on the attack, was rapidly disarmed by one of the Guyanese people. Some survivors had run into the jungle, nearly getting lost. When a plane flew overhead, they realized they had likely been left behind. The survivors of the attack that had been left behind were protected by the Guyanese people at the airstrip. Although it seems like Jonestown had planted seeds of doubt because the Guyanese people, at first, thought the survivors were undercover CIA agents. They were soon reassured that the people that had been attacked were just reporters and concerned family members, complete innocents, who never sought to hurt Jonestown. And so the Guyanese people promised to hide them and protect them. They took a tally of everyone from the party, and as it stood, 1 in 6 were dead, 1 in 3 were injured, and a handful of people were lost in the jungle and unaccounted for. The Red Brigade, this is what Jones called a security crew that launched this attack, had successfully shot Leo Ryan 20 times. Other people who died at the Port Kaituma airstrip included Don Harris of NBC, Greg Robinson, who was a photographer from the Examiner, Bob Brown of NBC, Patricia Parks, who was a defector of Jonestown, and the pilot of the plane. 11 other people were wounded. Later, the Guyanese government would take Larry Layton to court, but wouldn't find him guilty of attempted manslaughter. The U.S. also couldn't charge him for any murders committed in Guyana. But
why was it attempted manslaughter and not attempted murder?
I don't know how the law works.
Yeah, I think after our Weird Laws episode, everything goes. And animals on trial. Laws don't apply to anything, but they also apply to everything. Is it manslaughter is killing someone without the intent of killing someone specifically?
Murder is the intentional killing of another person, often with premeditation, while manslaughter is the unintentional killing of another, often occurring in the heat of passion or due to recklessness. So I guess since it was a heat of the moment type thing, it's considered manslaughter.
Okay, then.
But anyway, they didn't convict him anyway. They found him not guilty. Probably because he was a U.S. citizen and they, I don't know, maybe didn't feel like
opening that can of worms.
Yeah. But when he arrived back in the U.S. also couldn't charge him for murders committed in Guyana, but they did get him on assassinating a member of Congress and an internationally protected individual. And he was the only person to be held criminally responsible for what happens at Jonestown. He spent 18 years in jail and was paroled in 2002.
That's recent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Back at Jonestown, Jones announced that all of the guns were gone. Some members had taken them to go attack the Ryan party. And of course, Jones claimed he had nothing to do with this attack on the Ryan party. It was all those individuals' choice. He also claimed that the 3 defectors that had gone...
On his suggestion.
Yeah. Because he sent out, basically, to his security to do this attack. But then it was like, I had nothing to do with it. Oh no, what are we going to do now? Because now they're going to come for us because we killed a congressman. He also claimed that 3 of the defectors that had gone actually had the goal of attacking the Leo Ryan party. Jones had sent 2 the lawyers that had welcomed the Leo Ryan party into Jonestown out of the commune. As they left, they can hear Jones giving a sermon, yelling at the top of his voice, but they couldn't quite make out the words.
I don't think anybody could make out the words at this point that he was saying, even if they were right up next to him, because he's on so many drugs and so sleep deprived.
And around this time, both the San Francisco branch and basically the People's Temple House in Georgetown received the most important call they would ever get. The White Knight was on, but for real. they were basically told to commit revolutionary suicide. And the code for that was, a lot of people have gone to see Mr. Fraser. I think Mrs. Brownfield has gone to help. So as soon as
they were just really big fans of the show Frasier.
I don't know.
And I don't know where Mrs. Brownfield comes in. I've never seen the show Frasier.
I don't know where the phrase comes from. But yeah, that was their code that they basically sent out to, San Francisco.
They were just playing with Scrabble tiles to figure it out. Doing a Mad Libs.
So the rest of the concerned relatives that hadn't gone into Jonestown, because you remember only 4 were allowed in, they had no idea that all of this had just taken place. They're just chilling in the hotel, wondering where everyone is at. Stephen Jones, who is deeply worried about Jones's last message, decided to find Tim Stone at the hotel he was staying at in Georgetown and confront him.
And Tim Stone had left already. Tim Stone left a while ago, right?
Yeah, Tim Stone left the church just a little after Grace decides to divorce him, because he starts realizing. Yeah, he starts realizing that John Victor should be with his mom, and so that's when he becomes a temple enemy. Is even though he still technically wanted to follow Jones, but since Jones is so adamant on not allowing Grace to have her son back, Tim was like, okay, I can't do this anymore.
A lot of names and a lot of information being thrown at me, so I need to clarify every now and then. Okay, this is what I thought. Continue. So,
Stephen finds Tim Stone and is like, do you have any idea what you're doing? Do you understand the gravity of this situation? And Tim Stone is like, I'm just doing anything I can do to get my son back. Stephen tells Tim at this point that Jones will kill everybody. To which Tim responded, okay, he's a madman. And Stephen's like, yeah, he is. That's what you're dealing with. Meanwhile, at the Temple House in Georgetown, Temple member Sharon Amos, who was permanently stationed at the Georgetown house, saw the police headed her way. Thinking they were coming for her children, she knew she had to carry out her portion of the White Night. She grabbed a butcher knife and slit the throats of her 2 young children before telling her oldest daughter, who was 21, to kill her.
Jeez.
The eldest daughter, Leanne, slit Sharon's throat and then her own. When Stephen returned later that night to the Georgetown house, he was horrified and felt hopeless.
How did they know that she she told them in this order, and why? And
because I think there was some other man there, and he saw it all go down.
Why not I'm gonna kill all of my kids and then I know this is arbitrary and not important because they all die in the end, but I'm genuinely curious why she was like, I'm going to have my daughter kill me and then herself instead of I'm going to...
Well, and there are actually some accounts that they, slit the throats of each other because it's really hard to slit your own throat. So she slits the throat of her 2 kids. They're her kids. She has to do that. And then there are some accounts that are Leanne...
Her and the oldest daughter slit each other's.
Yeah, it could have been Leanne slit her throat and then slit her own, but there are also some accounts that say that they slit each other's throats. So, yeah, but everyone dies there. And then Stephen comes home later and he's like, oh, fuck, this is really bad. Archie Imes, who is back in San Francisco when all this is happening, knew that it was over for the People's Temple. San Francisco tried to call off the White Night. They reached out to members in Guyana for hours, but they received no reply. The concerned relatives at this point were told by authorities to stay in their rooms for their own safety, but they weren't told why. This put them through so much stress that one man even had a stroke.
Jeez.
It just gets so much worse once they really realize what's happening. Back in Jonestown, all members gather at the pavilion, Jones standing front and center and looking down upon them all. The plane is going to be shot down from the sky and come plummeting into the jungle, he says. We better not have any of our children left by then, because they will parachute down here. So we have to do the right thing for the elderly and the children and take the potion like they used to take in ancient Greece and step over quietly. We are not committing suicide, he said. This is an act of revolution. Jones was convincing everyone that if they did not kill themselves, they would be killed in a more violent manner by someone else.
This whole thing about not committing suicide, isn't that also, a lot of these cults that end this way, they have that mentality, like with the Heaven's Gate, we're not killing ourselves, we're moving on to the next level, the next world. Like, they're framing it differently.
Right, like, oh, you're not committing suicide, this is a revolution. Or, yeah, they have a different way of framing it that's not, I don't know, I guess to take responsibility for it.
Or to frame, because suicide has such a negative connotation around it.
Yeah. And after he just told a whole bunch of people that they weren't allowed to commit suicide, and then here he is commanding them to do it. And he starts blaming every single bit of this on Tim Stone, saying it was Tim Stone who was the one that brought all of those people there that would be the downfall of Jonestown. Some of the People's Temple members decided to object. Others asked if they could still move to the Soviet Union, but Jones told them it was too late for any other plans. Russia wouldn't want them with all of the stigma. Parents began to argue that at least the children should live, but Jones commented, "I agree the children should live, but they should also have peace." Not wanting anyone to take away the children, it was decided that the children would die first. Even when members tried appealing to his reason by saying, "How could you kill little John Victor?" referring to John Victor Stone, Jones replied, "Even though he is my son, he is no more important than anyone else." "The congressman has been murdered," he exclaimed. "It's all over now. What a legacy." It was time for them to all drink the potion. Grape flavor aid mixed with potassium cyanide. Liquid Valium and other drugs stood beside it in vials. Hypodermic needles were filled. The poison was poured in metal and plastic cups. Security patrolled with guns. They would shoot anyone who tried to run. The children were brought forward first. A nurse said, "Don't be alarmed by the noises they make. They're not in any pain. It's just bitter." Children were given the poison with syringes, shooting it straight to the back of their throats. But unlike they were told, they did not die fast and they did not die painlessly. Parents and grandparents cried out for the children dying before them. People who took the poison convulsed, screamed, and vomited blood. Jones moved among the dying, asking them to die with dignity, asking them to quickly take their drinks so that the elderly could find their peace as well, as they were the last ones to receive the potion. Anyone who protested was forcefully injected with poison. Only a few were lucky to sneak out and escape. One escapee remembered seeing John Victor Stone crying as he was being led towards Jim Jones. The child kept crying, "I don't want to die. I don't want to die." To which Jim Jones responded, "Is that my son crying? He better not be crying." The escapee also said that after seeing the horrific death of many others from the cyanide, many didn't want to go through with it and had to be forced. Some accounts suggest it took 20 to 30 minutes for adults to die and 5 to 10 minutes for children, which is a long fucking time.
Painfully long
to be
time.
dying. Yeah.
Painful. You're suffocating to death for 20 minutes.
Fucking horrible. One of the church financial secretaries was tasked to transfer nearly $7.3 million to the Soviet Union from Venezuelan and Panamanian banks, where they had held temple money. They wanted the Soviet government to spend the money to help people in the name of communism. They sent 2 temple members out with a briefcase full of thousands of dollars with instructions to deliver to the Soviet embassy. And they also include instructions for the Soviet embassy on how to retrieve the $7.3 million. But when these men watched their families die from poison with no way to save them, they buried the money and pocketed some, and were later arrested in Port Kaituma.
For what?
For just all of the shit that happened at Jonestown.
Being involved in
Yeah,
Jonestown.
pretty much. Because at this point, if everyone at Jonestown is in on the killing of the congressman and all those people on the plane, then, like, if they're seeing that everyone is kind of involved and maybe knew about it, they kind of have to arrest everyone that they see that might be from the commune. Not only the people of Jonestown died, Mr. Muggs, the monkey, was also shot and killed. Marceline was found poisoned among the other bodies. It was said she tried to get them to stop poisoning the children, that she screamed and fought so hard while they died that she had to be restrained. Jim Jones was found in his cottage. He had been shot in the head, his body crumpled on the floor with his head laying on a pillow, as if to make him comfortable. No one was around to see the death of Jim Jones, but it was thought he either shot himself or was shot by a close aide. Nurse Annie Moore was located right next to him and was also the only one who had a gunshot wound. They believe that she was the one that actually shot Jones before turning the gun on herself, and that she was the last person to have died in Jonestown. But of course, Jones and Annie took the coward's way out. They did not suffer for several minutes, foaming at the mouth, eyes rolling back in their heads from the cyanide poisoning like everyone else. Stephen Jones and two of Jim's adopted children, Tim Jones and Jim Jones Jr., were saved. Oh, so it was 3 children, not just 2. They were saved because they were on the basketball team that had gone to Georgetown. But 909 people perished in Jonestown. Around 300 were babies and children under the age of 18. Including the people who died at the airstrip and at the Georgetown house, the total was 918. It took an estimated 4 hours for all of the people to die at Jonestown, and only 7 people escaped that day. Less than 100 people of Jonestown survived either by defecting just moments or days before, by taking a trip out of Jonestown, or by escaping the massacre itself. Stephen did not grieve the death of his father and was actually disgusted by his father choosing the easy way out instead of taking the poison along with his followers. Stephen Jones was on the phone with the San Francisco branch for hours and finally convinced them not to commit suicide. There were over 300 people at the California church still, so he saved a massive amount of lives. Stephen is now married with children. A few members who escaped the massacre hid in the jungle for 3 days, afraid any plane that flew overhead was Jim Jones coming after them, even though they were actually rescue planes. They were attacked by mosquitoes, had a run-in with a jungle cat, and thought they would die out there until they were finally found by the Guyanese government and taken to the airstrip to see their family. Archie Imes would later say Jones had an ego and got caught up in a power struggle, but that the People's Temple was still a non-violent group. It seems like as horrible as the events were, he still had reservations about admitting how horrible Jones and the People's Temple was.
I mean, it's like I joked about it in the first episode, but Jim Jones' whole life was one big pissing contest.
Yeah, pretty much. What happened in Jonestown is often called a mass suicide, but what it really was a mass murder. Many people were forced, manipulated, or were just too afraid to object to the order. An outstanding amount of emotional manipulation, forced drugging, and physical torture occurred for years that led up to this final heartbreaking moment. In truth, these members never really had a choice. The Guyanese military didn't reach the compound until the following morning, expecting to liberate the entire commune, but were met with a grisly scene instead. Hundreds of decaying bodies starting to rot in the hot sun. A medical team spent 32 hours inspecting the bodies. They counted 187 bodies who had likely been forcibly injected, but they couldn't spend time to go through them all, so there were likely way more. The U.S. government offered the Guyanese government a blank check if the bodies could be buried there at the commune, but the Guyanese government wanted no more to do with Jim Jones and his people. U.S. helicopters with waterproof body bags and metal containers to serve as temporary coffins came down to the site to bring back all of the corpses. It took an army of people who were rushed to process the bodies within a week. By 1979, only about a third of the bodies had been claimed. The rest, over 500 of them, sat at the Dover Air Force Base in a hangar. A lot of this was due to the fact that families had to pay a lot of money to get the bodies out of there, and they had a problem getting cemeteries to accept any remains.
And a lot of them were probably, I know there were like whole families. There's no one to claim it if the whole family is passed.
Yeah, unfortunately, because there were a lot of people where their whole family was part of the church. Eventually, a cemetery in Oakland, California agreed to bury the hundreds of bodies that were unclaimed. They dumped the bodies in a mass grave. In 2014, cremated remains of 9 of the victims were found left unclaimed. They found 4 of the families, but 5 still remained unclaimed and ended up also being buried in Oakland. People fought for a memorial plaque for the victims at the Oakland Cemetery. It took 32 years, but they finally included a plaque for all 918 victims. They fought over whether or not to add Jim Jones's name to the memorial and ultimately decided they would add his name. Stephen Jones said he hoped the memorial would bring peace to the families of all the victims and anyone who survived the massacre.
I mean, Jim Jones was a victim of himself. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not saying he's a good person by no means, but he was a victim of himself.
Right, and he did perish the same day, so they didn't want to, exclude him just because he was the reason for it all.
Yeah.
Jim Jones Jr. became a doctor. He went by James Jones for a while because simply seeing the name Jim Jones would give him panic attacks. Despite how awful his adopted father was, Jim Jones Jr. said he was still proud to be the first black baby adopted by a white family in Indiana. Unfortunately for the people of Jonestown, their mission to do good and the legacy of peace and community they wanted to leave behind was overshadowed by this tragic event. While there were many awful things that happened at the People's Temple, and many of the members did absolutely awful things, there were also so many others who had so much hope and love and really just believed in freedom and the mission of doing good. For all those people that truly believed in the mission of brotherhood, equality, community, and social justice, I hope they rest in peace. And so for anyone, there is a 45-minute long audio from the Jonestown Massacre that is called the Death Tape. I'll link it in, I guess we'll probably link it in social media. So if you go onto our social media
You'll have to remind me too.
Yeah, at whataboutweird.pod, we'll include that in there. I was going to include some clips of it in this episode, but it's pretty awful to listen to. Basically, Jim Jones says, if we can't live in peace, then we must die in peace. He says at some point, without me, life has no meaning. After someone suggested they should survive on without him and tell of his goodness. You can hear one woman, Christine Miller, on the tape arguing with Jim Jones about the plan for revolutionary suicide. She seemed to be the only one advocating for their life. You can hear other people on the tape clapping, agreeing with him, and yelling out their praises for Jones. And it was actually really brave of Christine Miller to be, literally the only one that goes up on this tape and says, as long as there's life, there's hope. We don't need to do this. But Jones just keeps arguing back against her. On the tape, you can hear testimonies for the good of Jones, but behind the voices speaking praise, you can hear children screaming and crying in the background because they are actively dying, which is something that's really difficult to listen to. One woman actually comes up and says to the people who are crying, "Why are you crying? We should be happy about this. Jim Jones has suffered for us. Just thank Father." And the people clap for her. At one point, Jones says Jim Cobb is laying dead on the airstrip, and people are cheering for that. But it's just like a really horrific kind of last glimpse at what happened in Jonestown. So I don't know. Don't listen to it unless you want to be really fucking sad. But on Getty Images, there is aerial footage of the Jonestown Massacre in which you can see like all of the bodies just laid out on the ground. So I don't know. It's like,
you can also just, that's something, if you look up Jonestown, Jim Jones Jonestown, that will come up.
Yeah. Let's not include the link for that one especially, but like, these are all things like, if you want to see them, they're out there, but I wouldn't recommend it because I looked it up and it made me depressed all day today. So
yeah, I have seen them in the past, and it is...
yeah, it's not great.
It is haunting and depressing and sickening.
Yeah. But, yeah, anyway, that's, the really horrible story of Jim Jones and the People's Temple. And is, I think it still might be the biggest mass murder of, like, American citizens that have occurred overseas. But anyway, terrible story. There are no jokes.
Yeah,
at the
I can't say thank you for listening.
Sucks.
Yeah, normally I'd say thank you for telling me, but you know what? Fuck you.
Yeah.
Now I'm depressed.
Everyone's sad now. I'm so sorry. I wrote it in like the most fucking depressing way ever because it was sad.
You're reading it just dead-eyed, just super still, dead-eyed, and I'm just like, oh.
So sad. I hate it, but anyway, for anyone who has stuck around this long to learn about all of the horrible fucking shit that happened, Thank you, and I'm sorry.
Hopefully our next episode won't be as depressing.
Yeah. Let's do happy things for next month. Happy things.
Yeah.
Think happy thoughts.
Okay, let's end this episode by tell me a happy fact that you found
A
out.
happy fact?
Yes.
Okay, I did read this science article the other day that said that dogs produce like the exact same like happy chemicals in the same areas of their brain light up when they see their owners as like when we see people that we're in love with. And they did like this test where they took the dogs and they gave them food to see how their brains lit up, and then they like introduced them to a stranger to see how their brains lit up, and they introduced them, and then they brought in like their owner to see how their brains lit up, and every single time over like even their food or a new person or even a familiar dog, their brain lit up the most with like the loving bits of their brain when they saw their owner. So your dog loves you the most out of anything and anyone in the entire world.
I like that.
Me too.
My happy fact isn't quite that positive and wonderful, but I found out that coyotes and I think it's badgers will have like create friendships and will hunt together and play together.
That's so cute.
And so they'll just like if you see videos of them like playing together, it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, look at them playing, but it's actually something really dark. It's like, no, they're actually genuinely playing together and hunting together and stuff. And will create friendships.
I love symbiotic relationships.
Me too.
Thank you for listening. I am so sorry about today. If you liked it, please rate the podcast and share.
If you didn't like it, also please rate it
but still give us 5 stars. No bad
Yes.
ratings, please.
give us 5 stars, but be like, I'm now super depressed. I have clinical depression. 5 stars.
Follow us on Instagram at whataboutweird.pod, where we often share pictures related to the episodes. If you have any topic suggestions or personal weird stories, please DM us or email us at whataboutweirdpod@gmail.com.
And always remember
to ask about the weird.
Bye for now.